So thank you all for coming. My name is Nancy Barr. I am the Huskyfolio manager. So we're not really going to talk so much about PebblePad here today. PebblePad is just the technical platform we're going to be using. But really today's session is just about talking how we can use reflection and portfolios and workbooks within our classes. So we have 3 panelists here. Chris Plummer is representing Visual and Performing Arts, and I will get him up on the screen here as well. We have Jennifer Nish, faculty member from the Humanities Department, and we have Amber Kempinen here, who is a faculty member with Engineering Fundamentals. And I will talk a little bit about my experience in the Mechanical Engineering Department, so kind of representing them when I was working back with them on their ePortfolios. So, first question I have a series of questions to take us through things. My first question, though, is to the audience. How many of you use reflection in your courses right now? So most of you, fantastic. How many of you have ever had your students do some sort of a portfolio? So, a lot fewer hands, and I noticed probably pretty discipline specific as well, more likely in the humanities or the arts. So we are going to see a few different ways of using portfolios here. My first question, though, is a basic one, and that is, I'm going to start with Chris. So how have you used reflection and ePortfolios in your classroom?
So we have it threaded through the whole curriculum. We use it in a variety of different ways. One is so that students are reflecting on their own practice and maybe having a deeper understanding of the things that they do, because it's really easy for them to do things, get better at skills and improve, but not understand that they've shifted from here to here, and really helping them see that. And we, in terms of our whole program, we have them building these portfolios their freshman and sophomore year. The first semester of their junior year, they have a portfolio class where they build a more professional, outward-looking portfolio. And through that process, they reflect on what they've done their first 2 years, and then plan out the final 3 semesters of their education and say, here are the things here's where I want to go. Here's the things I need to do to get there. And so really trying to bring all of that together. And as we've been moving into essential ed, we've been expanding that. And so in a number of our classes, each semester they have to bring in portfolio assignments or posts from other classes. And so they can show off things that they've done in other classes, and we can help integrate that into their overall curriculum, because our programs are really interdisciplinary. So last semester we had a lot of students sharing their portfolios from or certain entries from Engineering 1101. This year I got a number of students who'd sewn pajama pants in matched patterns, and so they shared that. So this is, we're looking at one of our students' portfolio entries for and they also do hands-on work every semester, and so this is a student's project for a fashion show. And you can see that they're documenting things with photos, they're commenting on those, talking through that process, and sort of recapping it. This is a recap at the end of the semester. We also find that presenting your work to your peers is a great motivator, far better than presenting to silly faculty members. And so that is also really helpful in motivating and having the students think about presenting themselves, presenting their work, and sort of focusing in on what are the things that really communicate to others, how I approach work, how I want others to perceive me, which is also something that's really important, in terms of their success in work and on a job, is how they present themselves and how others perceive them, which is above and beyond just getting the work done. If you actually go back to the course listing, you can see this is one of their posts that they're required, but they also turned in a workbook. And I think if we scroll up to the top and look at the different assignments, we can see the workbook, and you'll see that this student has several semesters, and they've got projects from different classes, and they're building up a portfolio. If we go up a little bit further, we should be able to choose, you reviewing. This is the main project. I'm finding up the screen, but you can't see that. So right above, go back to submissions. And then right above, 2 lines down, you are viewing. Choose that, and you can do portfolio workbook. And then we can scroll to the bottom and look at her workbook, which is really pretty good. 3rd one from the bottom. Yeah. And so in here, she's got portfolio from last semester, portfolio from this semester. These are the PG, her pants, which was from a costume construction class. And if we actually look at contents, the other thing that we do with the platform is we've got, if you look at, I think it's the last one on that semester. Yeah, that one right there. Yeah, so we're using the activity logs. Well, we sort of tested this out this semester. There's lots of changes we want to make, but there's some really cool things that we're seeing out of this. So we set a number of target hours that they're supposed to work on this major project throughout the semester, and then they enter in each time that they work. And there's a series of questions there, and there's some Likert scales for how valuable was this activity. And I think we've been using a different system in this semester. Students could choose between them, the student, if you click on one of the bottom ones, she answered more questions than she did on the final ones. And I think we're going to be using this a little bit more throughout the semester to get those feedback and to talk to students about individual call times and project working times. And we had some students that were a little bit more answered more of the questions. We actually had too many questions this semester. We need to refine it, but we're finding the activity logs pretty good for those more hands-on practicum-based experiences.
Okay, great.
That's what we're doing.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Chris before? Okay. Jennifer, would you like to tell us how you use reflection or portfolios?
Sure, yeah. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So I am in the humanities department. My area of expertise is rhetoric and writing. So most of the courses I teach are communication intensive courses, particularly focused on writing. So the examples I give will be both in first year writing and in upper division writing courses. We've assigned portfolios as both midterm and final projects. That's typically how I like to do it. And the structure of the assignment is that students collect and revise the projects they've been working on. So at midterm, it's from the first half of the semester. And then at the final, they revise whatever they've done so far, but they also add things from the second half of the semester. So the midterm is both an opportunity for them to practice their cumulative learning, like maybe they've learned things since they handed in their first project, and they have a chance to then revise that project to kind of show that learning. And it's also a chance for them to check in about like, what are they learning? How's the course going? How do I want the second half of the semester to go? So in the assignment, I asked them to share like an overview. They reflect on how their work is progressing in relation to the course goals. And I asked them to provide specific examples as like evidence for their reflection. So the reflection is kind of a key part of the portfolio, where they're talking about how the different things they're doing in class, from major projects to like in-class activities, are helping them learn in relation to those course goals. And then they also share the assignments that they've done. In both levels of writing class, we have them do something called an author's note, which is where they, when they're handing in an assignment, or even when they're bringing it to class for a peer review, they write a note about their writing process and the decision making they've engaged in as they've been working on the assignment, the kinds of choices they've made, what's working well, what they want feedback on. And they include those author's notes at every stage when they share the assignment with someone else. So at peer review, and then in the midterm portfolio, and at the final portfolio. So the midterm and final portfolio are kind of like the same assignment, just covering a different like scope of the semester. And I think, I guess the other component, now I can't remember if I mentioned this already or not, is just kind of reflecting on next steps. So at the midterm, I asked them to think about, what do they want to continue in the second half of the semester? Is there anything they want to do differently? And then at the final, I asked them to think about what are they going to do with this knowledge moving forward after this course? So will it apply to their other classes? Will it apply to their job if they're graduating? So it's very heavily reflection based, kind of all throughout, and they're getting feedback on their assignments. And so what I've noticed is that by the time the final comes around, they're really like phenomenal at reflection, but sometimes at the beginning they need like feedback and ideas about what to write. Like they're just kind of like, well, I wrote it. And so it's kind of part of the process is also teaching them what to pay attention to and what to talk about when they're reflecting on those assignments. And the portfolios in first year composition, we just have a Google Doc template with like headings for the different assignments, and they plug their work in. Whereas in the upper division courses this last semester, we used PebblePad, and they created a portfolio using that platform. So there's like a kind of low tech and a more I don't know, high tech way to do it. But like we had one class period where we kind of walked through PebblePad, and the portfolio part of it is pretty user friendly. Like they figured it out pretty quickly. So yeah. That's kind of an overview of what I do.
All right. Thanks, Jennifer. Any questions for Jennifer?
Well, my question is, any insights into challenges of managing the process, particularly with students who may be more procrastinators and all that? And how is it working, and how does it unfold for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so some of the portfolio components, like they're due at different points during the semester. They'll submit a draft of their work for a grade. And then at the portfolio stage, they have a chance to like revise, and the portfolio is worth a little bit more. And I find that having a graded draft in between like the assignment and the final portfolio helps ensure that they're working on it along the way. We also have like in-class kind of check-ins where they'll do like a peer review, for example, and they'll have to post their work, like their progress on their work. And so a lot of times if they know that I'm going to be looking at it, they're more likely to kind of make sure they've made some progress. Whereas I found that if I do a peer review and I just say share your drafts with each other and they know that I'm not going to see it, then maybe they're less likely to have like a full draft. So I tend to build in like things like peer review, but also just low stakes assignments during the week where I'm like, maybe they're doing some research and I ask them to share a list of the sources they found. So those are a few kinds of things I do.
So Amber, can you tell us, you have lots of experience with it.
Yeah, so I've been, does everyone hear me okay? Yeah. So I've been doing portfolios for a few years with different softwares, but I've been primarily using it in the first year program prior to this year, and I was using it to document their individual project work. So each course has like a major project or multiple projects throughout. So in our first semester, we have like 3 mini projects, and I don't have any examples of portfolios for that. But they have like a reflection after each project to talk about like what were their main results, what would they do differently, you know, how did their team work together, and so forth. And 1102, which is the one I've primarily used, I've used it as a way to set goals. So they set initial goals at the beginning of the semester based on give them the outline, and I give them the project, you know, overview, and I say, okay, I need you to find a technical goal that you want to improve upon, and also this semester was like an essential ability that you want to focus on growing over the semester, and then they reflect on that at the end. And so if you go to the individual tab here, like, so the day 1, we had them do like this personal introduction where they just, you know, upload some interesting photo about themselves or something that represents themselves and like give us a brief. I have a lot of students and I want to get to know them a little bit. So this is kind of a way of me like sneakily trying to learn a little bit about them. And then we had them do the goal setting and just kind of set at like, okay, what are your goals for this semester? Where do you want to be? What's your technical goal? What's your essential ability goal? And then if you go to the next tab under that, we, at the end of this, I found this activity log thing. It's like so fun. And so throughout the semester, I had them kind of document their individual efforts toward their project. And I thought this was really important. And I did actually follow kind of your advice as well, as like have a midterm check to make sure that they are in fact documenting their work. And this is their final portfolio page. So this is a free range idea where they had to talk about their project, their management, their technical skills, the teaming that they went through, the overall, this is their team meetings. They had to document their team meeting minutes, and this group just used Snapchat log. Their solid modeling skills, programming skills. So they included videos, they included, you know, they had a lot of fun with this one. It was a good one. And then, you know, their final project and everything else in here. So this is kind of the overview of their final. And we use this as a way to help each person document the project, because, you know, some students like tend to work more closely on one area of the project than another. So someone might be the MATLAB expert or someone might be the CAD expert, but this made sure that they each could explain what the project entailed, and they had to document what their specific contributions were to the project. And so that kind of helped, I think, draw on that whole experience. So when they're talking about this to a potential employer, and that's kind of how I pitched it, is like, when you're talking about this, you have a way to tell the story of your project and explain specifically what you did and where you grew in your areas of skill. So that's kind of primarily what I've used in the past, but if you go to the team tab, I also added this year some things on their a team reflection. So kind of getting them some reflection questions on trying to get at like how, you know, who are their teammates? And then like, if you go to the team reflection one, like just kind of thoughts on like what challenges you had with your team, what communication strategies you had, how did you handle disagreements, what would you take moving forward with this team? Because it's like, I think it's really important to them for that. They're gonna be working on teams their whole careers, and they kind of need to think about like what worked, what didn't work, and what do they want moving forward. So this was like probably the more complicated. So this is a workbook that we made. And I think it worked pretty well. There's definitely some tweaks that I want to make for next year. But overall, I think that worked well. In other courses, I've done it kind of with specific reflection goals in mind. So for example, so this was facilitating group learning class. So this is our peer mentors take this class, and this was our final project. So I wanted them to document their, you know, final poster, but also kind of specifically their objective on how they are able to take a learning strategy and adapt it to different learning environments and different populations of students. So that reflection was on like, you know, how did they, you know, what is this information so they present, how to analyze this strategy in different aspects. And then I figured the last one was what's next. So like, where can they take this, or where can they adapt it? So I thought that was we kind of threw this on to just try and see how this worked. I think it worked pretty well for them to document their stuff.
And I have to get your last one up here.
Yeah, and then can you go to let's see.
Yeah, I was going to get the 4,000 level course. I can't get the ENT. Nothing is showing
Okay.
up for the ENT course.
Well, that's
so.
okay for the 4,000. So this other one, well, for the enterprise course that I did they have a built-in template for star reflection, so I was using it in terms of preparing the students for interviews. And as we talked about earlier in several of the sessions, students are all technically competent when they leave Michigan Tech. It's those soft skills, the essential abilities they need to be able to articulate, and the stories they need to be able to articulate well. And so I use this as a way to kind of prepare them to talk about like those emotional intelligence questions that they get asked. Like, when have you faced a challenge? Or tell me a story about how you overcame a challenge. And so I used the star reflection template that they have built in to kind of talk about what was the scenario, what task were you doing, what was your actions that you took, what were the results that you did. So it was kind of those things. And I had them outline something that had happened to them, not necessarily in the class, but like something that they had through their experience at Tech or through their personal experience that they can talk about. And so that was something that I could have them reflect on. We had this unit on storytelling and emotional intelligence, and then we can have them articulate that, and then we can give them some feedback on that so they can prepare for the interview. And I think that really they saw the value in that. I felt like that was something that they weren't like, oh, okay, because they were all in the middle of trying to get a job, so it was like really, it hit well with that. Mm-hmm. This was, I think, 40/60. Mm-hmm. So this is a different leadership class I did. And I did a workbook, and it was more of like trying to get them to outline their project. So what is the overview? What is your mission and vision? Who are your stakeholders? So outlining kind of what's going on. And then in the implementation phase, so I had them do an activity log, what's happening, what did you do for your project throughout the semester, and kind of some reflection activities at the end of this page as well. Can you look down? So just like kind of what was the effect, what was the outcomes, what would you do next? So challenges. So just kind of diving deeper. And then I had them, again, this is a free-form page where they had to document their success story. And again, they could do whatever they want here. And so this group, this student was a math learning coach, and she wanted to find ways to improve the center. So she had devised a series of questions that she would just put on the whiteboard to get the coaches to respond to get their feedback and improve the environment for the coaches and the students in the Learning Center. So that was her project.
Great. So, any questions for Amber?
When you did the group of 3 together, were they submitting things as a group and their portfolios are linked? Or each group member has to put their stuff up there?
Each student has to put their own things up there. So I've never done like shared. I didn't know there was a possibility to do a shared portfolio. And I haven't had any group projects where I want to do that because I want them to be able to document their own work and pick and choose and explain it.
Question, what is your sense about what students feel about the value of the portfolio beyond just meeting coursework requirements? How are they valuing it?
I think it's kind of hit or miss. Some students don't see the value, and we're working on that. I found that explaining it in terms of this is something that you are going to be able to use for potential employers to document your skill growth, and I think that pre-post kind of reflection on their skills, I think that definitely hit a lot of them. Like, oh, I can see the value in what I'm doing, and I can see that I did grow in this area. I think that was a good point, but like reiterating that this is going to be helpful for you later. Telling them that you lose access to your Canvas course after the semester is done. This is a way for you to document your work. You can talk about this later. You have examples that you've put in here. you can, and trying to pitch them that way. I've definitely seen a lot better reflections and a lot more complete portfolios this semester than I have in the past. Just because I think I've hit that harder, that you're going to lose access to your work after you leave this class unless you have it safeguarded and you're able to articulate it well.
Can I jump in on that? Mm-hmm. I just wanted to add, because like as someone in the humanities, a lot of students like need to be taught the value of the entire course in addition to the assignment. And one of the things that I do throughout the course is talk to them about like metacognition and how like metacognition is linked to their ability to transfer their learning to other contexts. And so like from the beginning of the semester, we kind of talk about like, yes, you're doing this to meet a requirement, but like here are some of the ways that this could link to your other coursework or to your future career. And when you create, assignments like this portfolio where you talk about what you learned and the process that you went through, that's increasing your ability to like use that knowledge later and apply it to other contexts. And I've found that really helpful, like in kind of getting students to see the value. There's still some who would rather not do it, but yeah, just wanted to add that. Yeah.
So kind of getting at that too, and moving into what ME did. So I wanted to highlight something that is in the 1102 portfolio here, and that's the failure modes and effects analysis. If you're in engineering, you know what this is. If you're not in engineering, you may have never heard of this thing, but this is a form of reflection. And when I was in ME, I would tell students, you have been doing reflection since you started in 1101. And you learned about the FMEA. It's a way to try to predict what could go wrong with your design. So they're already thinking about that, and Shane talked about this at lunch. What is something that could go wrong? So for those of you who are teaching engineering students, but you're not in engineering, your students have already done some of this. And by the time they get into that 3,000 or 4,000 level course, they've actually done this fairly often. So in ME, when we revised the curriculum in 2014, we knew we wanted to do something a little bit different. And I'm going to give you a little bit of the backstory about why we wanted to do something a little different. So the exit surveys would show quite often that even though we knew that the students had the technical skills and employers knew that, felt like our students had the skills to be good engineers, the students didn't think they had the skills to be good engineers. There was a question that went something like, how confident are you in your ability to perform in your first job? And a surprising number, I don't remember what it was at this point, but a surprisingly large percentage of students said, I don't feel like ready at all. I don't feel like I know anything. I don't feel like I learned anything. I have zero confidence in my abilities. And we knew that research had showed that reflection and the mere act of making connections between courses over time, not just in one class, but over time, build your confidence level because you're making learning visible. Shane mentioned that several times at lunch. So that was really what our intent for a portfolio was. The dean of the Pablis Honors College at the time, Laurel Meadows, was also on board with this idea, and she wanted students in the Honors College to do portfolios. So we started working on finding a portfolio platform, and I was part of that initial effort, and then it just couldn't get the money, just for various reasons, it never took off. So in ME, we kept the idea, but we just had students do a PDF. So that we would tell them we want an individual assignment, a group assignment, and then one assignment if you're choosing. We gave them some reflection questions to reflect on, and they did that in all 4 courses, and they kept building on that portfolio. Well, by the end of MEP4, ME Practice 4, that portfolio was over 100 pages long. So that is one department that I think is really going to benefit from us instituting PebblePad, because they're going to go from 100 and some pages down to 4. And we've started developing a template for the first semester of MEP. And it just, the students are going to be able to self-rate on some key concepts in that particular course. They'll be able to justify some things, they'll be able to add evidence, and then they're going to do one of these in each of their ME practice courses. So this is how we're going to transition from using Canvas to having something that is more portable and could possibly be used for assessment at some point. So that's a short answer about what MEP is doing. So we've talked about the what. Now I want to move on to the so what. It's a reflection form you can use. What, so what, now what? So what? What did your students get out of this activity? Now, Jen and Amber have already talked a little bit about this. Chris, what would you say your students get out of doing the portfolio and keeping track of things this way?
In the past, when they got into that portfolio class the junior year, when asked what they've done in their education, their first answer is nothing. And now they have those resources to go back and to remember what they did and for it to all be right there. And I think they're getting a much better sense of the actual quality of a lot of the work that they've done, because they do really great work, and now they're seeing the good work that they do a little bit more, and it's I think less of, oh, I just did this thing for class and it's no big deal, but it's actually, well, this is really good work and you can show that to people and talk to people about it and you should be proud of this. And so actually there's a lot of helping students be proud of what they're doing and elevating them and getting them more engaged through their pride and through their joy in their work, and engaging in a lot of positive emotions that help students, help with retention, help with students connecting that knowledge and it rooting. And we know that from educational research that, happy learning and happiness is much more effective than stressful learning. And so I think we're seeing some benefits in those ways.
Thanks, Chris.
Can I add on? Mm-hmm. So one thing that in the 1102 class, so we had them do this individual reflection on their goals. We had them do a team reflection on their teaming experience, and then kind of a project summary, and then their individual page where they did this. After all of that, we had them come in for an individual interview with the faculty member, which was really time consuming, but they were all able to articulate, their contribution, what their teammates did. They could tell me every step of the project, the whole design process. It was, I don't think I would have gotten that last year. So
did you find a difference between, did this help those students who maybe weren't academically as strong? Was this a different way for them to demonstrate things?
I'm not sure. I feel like we have a lot of creative students. I feel like the project was a really good way of getting them to try different things, and a lot of iteration, and talk to the customers and try new designs, test it out. Some students did a lot of fun with their pages, some did not, but they could all tell me about it. So I feel like the communication part, which is not a typically strong suit, was, I feel like, a lot stronger. They prepared for it and they were ready to talk about it. So.
Yeah, I think building on that, one of the things that I find really valuable about it for both the students and for me is I think that connecting their work to the course goals in the midterm and final reflection I have them do helps encourage them to be aware of why we're doing what we're doing in class, which I think in classes like mine that a lot of students see as kind of like a hoop they need to jump through in order to get their degree, articulating, okay, these are the course goals, these are why these are our goals, and then having them connect the different kinds of work we're doing to those goals helps them see why it matters that they're doing things that the assignments and things like that. And I've noticed students making connections that I didn't even make between some of the assignments and the course goals. And so I think it's really important for them and their kind of awareness of the what they're getting out of some of their general education or essential education requirements. And I don't really have creativity isn't a part of their grade, but I find that a lot of students really enjoy being able to bring their personality into the PebblePad portfolio through like the photos and some of the like framing things where they talk about like why they made particular choices in their project. So they'll do things that are like extra time and work that aren't really going to have an impact on their grade, but really, you know, like making a custom banner image for the top of their pages or things like that. And so I think that kind of, you know, goes into like the enjoyment and the fun. It's really enjoyable for me to read those things too, or to view them.
So that kind of gets at the now what, and I'm going to flip things a little bit from the students to the faculty. So most of you have been, you've talked about doing this for several years now. So what do you as a faculty member get out of reading these reflections and viewing these portfolios? And how do you use that information in future iterations of your courses? So Chris, we can start with you.
The things that come to mind actually were just mentioned by other folks, and I'm definitely stealing some stuff from you guys. I think one of the things that I find is that I learn about what the students did on their projects and often know more about how they're approaching things and how they're learning and what they're putting into their projects. And they often put things into their project that do increase the quality of the final product, but aren't observable when you only see the product. But when they reflect on it, when they talk about their process, when they document it, suddenly you can see all of this work that the students have done and really put into it that you can then congratulate them on and engage with, and becomes, you know, something that we can talk about in class and can build this learning community out of some of this reflective content, and also makes me happy as a teacher going, oh, look at what those guys did. And then the other piece is just having that better understanding of how they're approaching things and how they're thinking about things and changing and supporting their learning better and saying, oh, they're having trouble here, and I can help fill in, I can help bridge that, or figure out ways that I can address that in other ways so that they're better prepared for the assignment, or knowing that that's a thing that students struggle with, how can we better approach that in the curriculum? So there's a much better feedback loop with the greater quantity of discussion about the learning experiences that are going on. So that's super, super helpful.
Yeah, in ME, I would usually do an end of year, academic year report for the department where I would read through probably about half of the portfolio essays and then skim the rest because I could start to see themes emerging. And then I'd prepare a report for the department. And especially in those first few years of that curriculum change, we use the information from the students to further refine the courses, to refine the labs, to work with our TAs, and really got a lot out of just the depth of the reflections. And it kind of gave me some hope too, because we would ask students to talk about previous courses that maybe had a real impact on them. And a lot of times students would say something like, I finally understand why I had to take composition. I actually now understand better having to use those skills in this course. And they would say things like that about, you know, maybe a philosophy class they took or something like that. So it would take maybe a few semesters, but they would eventually get it. They would eventually make that connection there. So we only have a few minutes left. So I wanted to give the audience an opportunity here to ask some comments or maybe even share some of your stories if you have any. Yes, Shane.
I was going to ask exactly the same question you asked at the end about what, because I was hearing about happiness and personality and joy and learning more about the students, and I hear that, a lot. So I think looking at the work that everyone's doing, it's quite brave for faculty to take on a new platform, to change the pedagogy a little bit, to centre on learner and learning centres and reflection. There's got to be something you get back from it, hasn't there? So it's nice to hear, for me, that joy, happiness, personality, insights. It is sort of a reasonable trade, it seems to me, for the extra work you're doing as pathfinders doing this work. So that didn't turn into a question, that was a comment.
I mean, I can say, just to kind of building on that, I always keep a document when I'm teaching of like things to change next time. I was so busy this semester, my document was very short, but while I was doing the final portfolios, I like tripled it in size because I got so much insight from their reflections and their portfolios on what they were and weren't understanding, particularly like one of the courses I was teaching for the first time. And it's just really like, it provided a lot of detail that I wouldn't get from the evals at the end of the semester.
That was one comment for that faculty would tell me about the report, is that they didn't get much from the teaching evaluations, and we all have, our very strong opinions probably about the teaching evaluations. But with the reflections, there was nothing writing on it. I was really surprised at the depth that students would go into, and we gave them some coaching on it. But they would really get into some detail about, this is why this assignment worked for me, or this is why it did not work for me, and how the materials didn't work, or things like that. So it was way more valuable than any teaching evaluation. Yeah. So Amber, any final thoughts?
Let's say, like, I've taught, and I tell the students this too, is like, I've taught the course 20 years and I've never taught it the same way twice.
Yeah.
There's always ways to improve. There's always new information. This is just a really nice tool from my tool set, like, that I can use to help get feedback and insight into the students, and where I didn't hit the mark, or where I need to correct a misconception, or where I can make it better. So it's helpful.
I think for me, I taught a pilot experience this semester where students were learning about teaching Spanish, and then they were going to the middle school and teaching Spanish to the middle schoolers. And one thing that was very interesting with the ePortfolio part, I had them build an ePortfolio to present their learning journey throughout the class. And the only requirements were to highlight 3 aspects of the class that they found interesting, and to have 3 pages on the ePortfolio, but they could put as much as little as they wanted. And pictures, it was up to them. And it was very interesting to see how many of them brought in pictures from high school experiences, from when they were little and they traveled to Mexico, and that was their first experience with Spanish, and how that kind of, made them think about it when they were reflecting on how the middle schoolers were learning. And so it was a cool way to see how they were connecting all the experiences outside of the class, and not just in the experience middle school location, but other experiences. So I don't think they would have done that if I had asked just to write a paper, right? So I think it gave a different dimension to that assignment, I think. So it was very cool for me.
Yeah, it gets at that. It unleashes some creativity in them that you weren't expecting. Yeah. Okay, we are out of time. I hope you got some ideas from this. If you have any questions about PebblePad, you want to talk about things over the summer, or once we're back on schedule come August, which feels like a very long ways away right now, I'm happy to talk with you. Just send me an email and we'll set up a time to chat. Thank you.